Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let's talk about the tapes you referenced. I think it's so interesting that she's using these tapes as leverage, so that when people call her a liar, she says, well, here are the receipts, here are the tapes. April, let's listen to a part of the tape of the day Omarosa was fired by John Kelly. This was, she says, taped in the Situation Room, I guess on a cell phone. Let's listen to it and then we'll talk about it.
Can I ask you a couple of questions? Is the president aware of what's going on?
Let's not go down the road. This is a non-negotiable discussion.
I don't want to negotiate. I've never had a chance to talk to you, General Kelly.
Yeah,
so if this is my departure, I'd like to have at least an opportunity to understand.
We can talk another time. This has to do with some pretty serious integrity violations. So I'll let it go at that. So the staff and everyone on the staff works for me, not the president.
So there you go. Part of this tape recorded at the White House on the day she was let go. April, I know that Omarosa also secretly taped you in the past. So how are you processing this new tape?
Yes, she did. Well, you know, in the Washington Post article, after she edited a tape, our altercation in the West Wing that I detail in my book, factually, she passed the tapes around. And she said that is what we do, meaning that's what everyone, including the President of the United States, does, tapes people. But here's the problem. If indeed these tapes are factual, and I believe them to be credible, I was on Twitter today and I was reading some of the tweets and I saw something from David Frum after the Meet the Press interview. And I called Congressman Elijah Cummings, Maryland Congressman Elijah Cummings, who is the minority leader in the Government and Oversight Reform Committee in the House. And he said if indeed these tapes are there and they were taped in the Situation Room and the Oval Office and other places, this is a national security issue and he's looking into it. National security protocols were not followed. Omarosa says that she has taped in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. We've heard the tapes. Now, I've talked to people from former administrations, and they've said you are not allowed, and I know this for a fact, when we go into OTRs with the president or a senior official, we have to put our cell phones in these cubby holes in the Roosevelt Room. In the Oval Office, you're not supposed to tape. You're not supposed to bring your cell phone. In the Situation Room, you're not supposed to bring your cell phone. In the Roosevelt Room, you're not supposed to bring your cell phone. You're not supposed to have your cell phone in the office of the Chief of Staff, and you're not supposed to have your cell phone in the National Security Office. And this leads to a broader question. Are national security protocols being followed in this White House? Because, you know, we're talking about Russia. Now you got to worry about Omarosa and then others who might have cell phones taping things and they could be hacked. So this is not just about a book and getting paid for a book and telling all. You know, if she did the tapes, you know, we hear voices and everything. You don't know if they're edited or not. But the bottom line, and there's a credibility issue with her. I'm just going to be honest with you. There's a credibility issue with everyone. But there are tapes. And this is a national security issue. This is not just about a book anymore. She's giving receipts and she's now in trouble.
It's a strange situation because nobody involved has a lot of credibility. Let's put on screen Sarah Sanders' statement about the book. Even though I don't think Sanders has read the book yet, she came out and said the book is full of lies and false accusations. And she says she regrets that the media is giving lies a platform. Keep that in mind the next time Sarah Sanders issues a false accusation. So it's a matter of who has less credibility, I think. And Jeff Greenfield, we also have to keep in mind Omarosa's many past statements supporting President Trump.
You know, I don't quote Karl Marx very often, but one of his famous lines is, history repeats itself, The first is tragedy, the second is farce. And if it weren't for the fact that, as April says, there are some serious national security issues here, this kind of looks like a weird remake of Dr. Strangelove. And maybe the way to approach this is once you have a situation where someone like Donald Trump can actually be president of the United States, why should we be surprised that a reality TV star is offering a book which is now dominating the media, including, may I say, the lead of this program, in which it is quite clear, A, that her affection for Donald Trump is in direct relationship to whether or not she had a high-paying job at the White House, and second, where the most basic fact-checking in a book, not a tweet, has clearly been missed. So my feeling is, as far as I'm concerned, I want to wait for Bob Woodward's book. I'm an old school guy. I have a feeling that his credibility is a shade more strong than Omarosa's, and see what he has to tell us about how this White House operates.
Right. You know what's interesting? Woodward's book is called Fear. It's out in a month, but it's already doing well, so much better on Amazon than Omarosa's book is. There is something to be said for more reporting and less of this speculating. But here's the thing about Omarosa, Jeff. She says our president is in declining mental health. Should that not be a lead story? She says he's a racist and he's in declining mental health.
Yes, except it should be. But part of the problem is that when you have comments by somebody who up to about, a year ago was telling us we all had to bow down to Donald Trump, it makes the assertions less credible. Look, it's always a disgruntled employee who does this. We've never had a book from a gruntled employee, as far as I can tell, in American history. But part of the problem is, if Donald Trump is in fact in declining compos mentis, that's a serious issue. But the problem is the source of this, Omarosa, is, in my view, so compromised by everything she said up to the point when John Kelly kicked her out of the White House, that it goes to the issue of how much are you going to trust this.
Right. Definitely. Sorry, April, last word to you. Yeah. Sorry, April, are you there? Last word to you, since you've known Omarosa
I'm here.
for years.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Yeah, I've known Omarosa for years, and we are not friends anymore. What has happened is that this White House created this monster, and it was even before this White House. I would say Donald Trump created his own monster, and now he created the own monster in his own likeness, and this monster has come back to bite him. And the bottom line is, I can tell you for a fact, she was complicit, but she also did the bidding, and she wanted to prove that she was in their camp because she used to be a Democrat. And she went so far as to try to go after me. She told Sean Spicer to stop calling on me. She has done so much. She lied on me, telling people that I was taking money from Hillary Clinton to hurt my career. Omarosa did these things. She may not even talk about it in her book, but I talk about it in mine. And she did these things to support her and to support her friend that she said she was loyal to. And the bottom line is that, yes, she was complicit, but she was doing all this knowing that it was going to be a payoff in the end for her. And then once she got upset with him, or he got upset with her, or whatever happened, she decides to turn on him. She's not a friend, she's a liar, and I would say she's evil.
It is Monday, the 13th of August of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays, folks. That's right, it's been a long weekend like all the other weekends since, it all started. Weekends weren't like this before. Isn't it weird? Hardly any of us remember that. But weekends were much more calm. Really? Jeez. Hey, no one, absolutely no one likes Omarosa. I know that's not news, but I sometimes find particular glee in watching them eat their own. Well, I wouldn't say glee. Maybe a macabre fascination at the depths of humanity that people will stoop to. Well, April Ryan did say that Trump created the evil monster named Omarosa, and now she's come back to bite him. Yeah, well, no one likes her. Amazing. Well, Stephen Miller is back in the news again, and we actually start off one of the offerings in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which you are in right now. We have a little story that is referenced to Stephen Miller, though not about him. But Stephen Miller just got in the news because apparently his family is disowning him as if they hadn't before. I think they disowned him when he was going to be the, I don't know. I don't know what to call him, but he was a little schmuck. Let's put it that way, when he attended Santa Monica High. And an uncle basically said, this guy's a hypocrite. Because, of course, Stephen Miller's family survived the Holocaust, or some of them did. Not all, only some. And those that did survive somehow made it to this land that we called America, in which a person's dreams could become reality by dint of their own hard work. Isn't that something? And his family is saying he would deny that. He would deny that now to even his own family. Makes you wonder why he hates his family so much. Well, the self-hater of any stripe. We know. Just put any of the practices, the lives of any of those, self-hating homosexual. We've seen a few of those before, and look what happened. Roy Cohn. Maybe even J. Edgar Hoover. I'm not sure about him. But, sometimes it makes you wonder. All sorts of other types. There's all sorts of self-haters, and we know. We know what kind of self-hater Stephen Miller is. He's not unique. And the devastation that they wrought, when put into even a modicum of power. I mean, if this guy was like a manager at a Rite Aid, you know what kind of structure that would be, you'd be employed under if you suffered working there. Little petty bureaucrat. Give him a little power. The next thing you know, they want to build concentration camps. It's so weird. It's so weird. Well, we better get on to the rest of the menu, since April Ryan really had to put Omarosa in her place. And it took a little bit of time. But it's Monday, isn't it? Well, it was probably Stephen Miller who told Trump he could have a border war with Canada. With Canada! Over a small, desolate island off the Maine coast, so they could probably rename it the Granada Falklands. I don't know. I'll be here all week. The DHS spins the border numbers again. Yeah, you cannot trust the DHS to give you straight facts on their own recorded paperwork. You just can't. And a Colorado couple's 4-year-old adopted daughter is facing deportation because, well, she's brown. I don't really see too many, what do they call them, anchor baby chain migrants from Russia. Or, the old Soviet satellites, having an issue. They even advertise tours here to do it. But this little 4-year-old baby, and they've had this baby since it was really just a baby, not a toddler. A baby, 6 months old. Going to be deported to wherever, Peru. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a California jury ordered Monsanto to pay $289 million in the world's first Roundup cancer case. And fire crews reported progress in their battles against blazes across the coastal West, with some of the major wildfires slowing in growth. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the right-ish of the page the chat room link, where Kelly Lincoln monitors the chat room. And though she is a real person, she has to go out and make, money to pay her bills. All right? So don't expect her to be there 24/7, 365. But she's there almost that. Okay, but there's always somebody there that you could chat with. That's why it's called a chat room. And do engage. So, to the left-ish of the chat room link are the Contribute Donate buttons. We are unable to do this without you. Thank you for your generosity. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. How simple is that? You can also check us out on Facebook, because we're there. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's, and I'm there as Justice Putnam. I ain't no use trying to hide behind a nom de plume now. Jeez, forget it. And you can also follow the show on Twitter. Now, check this out. You can follow West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on Twitter at Cookbook West. Don't ask me why. Just type in West Coast Cookbook and it'll just show you. At Cookbook West. That's us. Though we are on Facebook as West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy because Zuckerberg sucks you in. And the next thing you know, you're weighted down by all the weight of the massive iceberg pulling you down. Yeah, I went a long ways to make that one. Let's see. You can also find us on podcasts at Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn, etc., etc., etc. Alrighty. Let's get on with this first offering here by Martin Sismer out of Raw Story. This sounds like something Stephen Miller would tell Trump. It just makes absolute no sense that we would, and actually I got to tell you, there's been some heavy-handed military action out there already. What is this about? His wall on the Mexican border, Martin Sismar begins, has not been built, but Donald Trump is picking a second border dispute. Hey, this is how all wars are lost. You go on two fronts. Just look at it. But the guy never reads. He read Mein Kampf. You think that he would have learned something from that. He just liked the juicy parts. Well, according to the Washington Post, under Trump, the U.S. State Department is getting aggressive with Canadians over an obscure and unpopulated island off the coast of Maine. Maine! Now, I'm going to butcher this word. I think it's Machias. Seal Island is a 20-acre island 10 miles off the coast of Maine. That's why I think they should rename it the Granada Falklands. Just put two diversionary wag-the-dog things together and call it your own. The only people who reside there are Canadians who run a lighthouse. There are no trees on the windswept island. But that has not stopped U.S. Border Patrol agents and speedboats who detain Canadian lobster boats in an area where fishermen from both countries are supposed to be allowed to work. This is the first time in memory that such a thing has happened. Captain Andrew Peterson, who leads birding groups to the remote island, said there was an incident just after the G7 summit in Quebec when Trump was rude to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And now they've retaliated. You don't step on the Big Don's toes because he's Donnie Two Scoops, the little man. calling Trump the little man reminded me of his attempt to appeal to what he calls, in the grand Nazi tradition, of course, of appealing to the forgotten man. But I got to tell you, now this is anecdotal, mind you, but every so-called, quote, forgotten man and woman that I've ever met, they don't want you to forget that they are dickheads and motherfuckers. Just so you know. Okay, this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, is by Andrew Boyle out of Just Security. Well, the July border numbers were released on Wednesday of last week, and once again, the Department of Homeland Security saw it as an opportunity to dissemble to the American people in the service of the Trump administration's immigration policies. The numbers show that in July there were 31,303 total apprehensions. This is a combination of almost 4,000 unaccompanied children, almost 9,300 persons arriving as part of a family unit, and 18,000 others. I like the others. In a press release, DHS characterized this data by saying, Southwest border migration numbers dropped in July for the second month in a row. This decrease shows that when there are real consequences for breaking the law, the conduct of those considering crimes will change. Well, obviously it hasn't changed for them. Oh, maybe because there's no real consequences to them. The DHS, ICE, and all the other Gestapo SA. Suffering consequences. Well, that could change. Yeah. Blue tsunami. This might be what it takes. And a tsunami is not just a wave. It's got a lot of flotsam in there with a lot of energy, and it just knocks you off your feet and pummels you. Sometimes to death. Not nice. It's not just a wave you can ride in. Trust me. Well, however, the month-to-month comparisons is a red herring, and the facts don't bear the weight of DHS's preferred causative analysis. To begin, the total apprehensions for July are higher than the same month for 5 of the last 8 years. This would indicate that whatever consequences Trump is imposing, they are on average less effective than the way immigration has been handled in recent years. I don't know. I wouldn't say being nice, because Obama, let's be clear. He basically gave the right, an olive branch. Sure, I'll be tough on immigrants at the border, especially the southern border, just so we can get along. And you know what? They slapped him in the face again. Every single time, and he couldn't extricate himself out of that one. Once you give a rat a cookie, they're going to want the whole dairy farm, trust me. Every single time. Well, DHS conveniently doesn't explain what real consequences they are referring to. But the numbers show that Trump's cruel family separation policy had almost no deterrent effect on the relative group affected, which are family units. DHS is a repeat offender when it comes to making misleading statements on border numbers in the service of the Trump administration's policy preferences. It's ironic, but alas, no longer surprising, that the administration of a president who's known for weaponizing the phrase fake news against critical news outlets so consistently has a causal relationship to the facts when it comes to immigration. Think Progress brings us this last offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Colorado couple is scrambling to protect their 4-year-old adopted daughter from deportation after the child's immigration case was recently denied. Amy and Marco Becerra, who are U.S. citizens. Sure they are. They have a last name that's not American. Apparently, Becerra. Were living in Peru when they decided to adopt their daughter Angela, in 2014. A Peruvian court finalized the adoption in 2017. Angela's biological mother, who has developmental disabilities and had been a victim of sex trafficking, had asked the Becerras to care for the girl. Because Angela's adoption was a domestic Peruvian one and not international, the Becerras had to remain in Peru for more than a year after the adoption was finalized before the U.S. granted Angela a temporary tourist visa, which expires at the end of this month. Within weeks to go before the visa expiration, their daughter's pending immigration application was denied without explanation, meaning Angela would be undocumented come September 1st. Now, we do know that Sessions personally, did you hear that? Personally intervened in that mother and child who were thrown on a plane and deported to Honduras while their court case was ongoing? To spite the court, the ACLU, and anybody else that said, we are not going to be hindered when we say we are going to do what we want to do when we want to do it. I mean, it was like the worst Nazi film you'd ever seen. Joseph Mengele going down the line picking, I'll take that child and I'll take that mother, and then performing these horrible experiments on them. We're both citizens, Angela said. My husband and I have a full legal binding adoption completed. We have a birth certificate that lists no other parent. I don't know what it takes to reopen a case. Once it's closed, it seems to be closed. If she expires her visa, she is officially here as an undocumented alien and legally is at risk for deportation, even though both her parents are citizens, Becerra added. Both she and her husband work for the government, she for the Colorado government and her husband for the federal government. Oh, you mean they've been working there when Obama was president? Then obviously they have to suffer. Every single, government worker, civil service person has to suffer. Jesus. The case comes at a critical time during the Trump administration's increased crackdown on undocumented immigrants, with ICE arresting more undocumented immigrants without criminal histories under Donald Trump than during the Obama administration. Many who face deportation have children and other relatives who are U.S. citizens and have had to deal with seeing their families ripped apart. Yeah. Well, heightened criticism of the zero-tolerance policy eventually compelled Trump to sign an executive order in June to halt family separation while keeping the zero-tolerance policy in place, while opting to detain families together. We'll just throw them all in the gulag. Recent data released by the Customs Border Protection last week found that apprehensions of families increased more than 142% over the past year, with more than 9,200 undocumented families detained in July. But those numbers were fudged, by the way, and we just mentioned that in the previous story. Well, you can't trust any of them. They're rats. God. Nazi rats. Think of that. All right, we better get to our break, and we better. Time's a-flying, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world, because that's what we do. and then we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, That's Impossible. These are the 15 things you need for a Mission Impossible movie. 1, a 4-person team, point guy, tech guy, woman, and swing specialist. 2, a multi-layered MacGuffin, that is to say, something or someone you have to get in order to get something or someone else. 3, administrative pressure on the team. 4, 3 types of chases, foot chase, motorcycle, and car. 5, at least one team member with questionable allegiance. 6, a first act mission where something goes wrong. 7, a second act heist. 8, detailed plans that 9 must be changed on the fly due to unforeseeable normal events. 10, a game of mask, who's wearing the mask. 11, an insane Ethan Hunt climbing sequence. 12, a solid script. 13, a cool director, someone with vision, not just a company player. 14, Ving Rhames, and increasingly Simon Pegg. And 15, Tom Cruise. That's it. Those are your puzzle pieces. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to put these pieces together so that they rise organically from your conflict and do not feel like the stale execution of a formula. That's a tough mission, though not tough enough for writer-director Christopher McQuarrie. Having written Bryan Singer's beloved The Usual Suspects, McQuarrie met Cruise when he co-wrote Singer's 2008 film, Valkyrie. McQuarrie then wrote and directed Cruise in 2012's Jack Reacher, and then Cruise tapped him for 2015's Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. That makes McQuarrie Cruise's golden boy behind 2 action franchises and the first director to do Mission Impossible double duty. Now with Fallout, McQuarrie gives the MI series something new, a sense of confidence for the whole franchise. Fallout directly follows up the events and characters of Rogue Nation, while fleshing out threads laid down in Ghost Protocol and even references De Palma's Impossible. He takes all these pieces and deals them out with a magician's hand, sometimes showing you your card, sometimes pulling it from behind your ear with a satisfying, wait for it, mission accomplished. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Deboki Chakravarti. Chemists come up with new substances every year to go in everything from makeup to medicines. But introducing these chemicals into products also raises questions about their potential dangers. Can they irritate the skin, the eyes? Could they damage DNA? To identify these possible risks, companies often test chemicals on animals. But these trials are expensive and time-consuming, and the results aren't always reliable. Plus, many consumers are uncomfortable with their favorite products being tested on animals like mice, rabbits, and guinea pigs. But we may be able to avoid animal tests without sacrificing the ability to forecast problems, because researchers have developed a computer program that can predict the toxic effects of new chemicals better than animal testing can. The method relies on a database that the scientists created that includes the results of more than 800,000 animal tests documented in various toxicology registries, covering about 10,000 chemicals. Such databases make it possible for an expert to anticipate the dangers of an untested chemical by comparing it to similar chemicals. This process is called read-across, and it is the main alternative to animal testing. But read-across is subjective. Different people might choose different comparison chemicals based on what compounds they're familiar with. They could even come to opposing conclusions. So, to remove that subjectivity, the researchers programmed a computer to do read-across on their database for them. Their method uses machine learning algorithms to compare the structures and toxic effects of different chemicals. The result is a sort of map of chemical structures and properties that allows them to predict the potential toxic effects of a new chemical based on where it sits on that map. And this method enabled the scientists to predict a chemical's dangers more accurately than did some of the most commonly used animal tests. The results are detailed in the journal Toxicological Sciences. The software is being made commercially available by Underwriters Laboratories, which co-sponsored the research. Given that computer programs don't need the money or time to run that animal experiments do, this virtual toxicology screening should appeal to companies and animal lovers alike. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Deboki Chakravarti.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser, filling in for your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. As the U.S. population ages, more people are at risk for injuries. The largest percentage of injury-related deaths among this group are caused by falls. Elizabeth Burns is with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss ways to prevent injuries and deaths from falls among senior adults. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, what are some of the more common consequences when a senior adult falls?
Well, first, it's important to note that falls are incredibly common. More than 1 in 4 older adults will fall in a given year. Common consequences include loss of independence and an increased fear of falling, as older adults are afraid to do the same kinds of activities they were doing before. And this can actually lead to more falls, as older adults have less strength in their lower body. Common consequences include hip fracture and traumatic brain injury. And ultimately, in 2016, almost 30,000 older adults died because of a fall.
So are falls more common in men or in women?
Falls are more common in women, and more women go to the emergency department because of a fall, and more women die because of a fall. However, the rate of fall deaths are more common in men than women. What this means is that out of 100,000 men, more will die from a fall than out of 100,000 women.
What are common causes of falls among older people?
Getting on and off the toilet and getting in and out of bed are common causes of falls. Walking around the hallways at night when the lights are off is a common way people fall. There's also an increased amount of medications used in seniors, which have side effects like making them lightheaded, and that increases the risk of falls and is a common cause.
With all of those factors, what are some ways our listeners can decrease their chances of falling?
Older adults should talk to their healthcare provider or doctor about how they can decrease their chances of falling. This can be done during the annual wellness visit or during annual physicals. The doctor will recommend an exercise program that should increase strength and balance, or maybe refer you to a physical therapist. Additionally, they can look through your medications and perhaps reduce your doses or suggest medications that decrease your chances of falls.
Are there things we can do to modify our homes to prevent falling?
Oh, absolutely. Installing grab bars on the side of the toilet, making sure that rugs are taped down or removed, making sure that there's lighting in the hallways are all really simple ways that an older adult can modify their home to prevent falls.
Where can listeners go to get more information about preventing falls?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/study, and that's spelled STEADI.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've been talking today with Elizabeth Burns about ways to prevent fall-related injuries and deaths among senior adults. Improving strength and agility through regular exercise and removing potential obstacles in the home can help decrease the risk for falls. If you or a loved one is older and struggle with mobility, talk with a healthcare provider about ways to decrease the risks for fall-related injuries and death. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Even before the Constitution was ratified in 1788, people disagreed over what powers the Constitution gives to Congress to promote the general welfare. The topic is still debated today. One question is whether the General Welfare Clause gives Congress the power to spend taxes on anything it pleases, or whether it refers only to spending on the enumerated powers listed in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists were opponents of the ratification of the Constitution. Before its ratification, they argued that the general welfare provision of Article 1 gave Congress unlimited powers to legislate whatever they wished. The central government, they said, would be all-powerful and a dangerous threat to liberty. In response to the Anti-Federalist claim that the Constitution gave unlimited powers to Congress, James Madison argued that the powers delegated by the Constitution to Congress and the rest of the federal government are few and defined. Few and defined means that the Constitution does not give Congress the power to spend taxes on whatever it chooses, but limits its spending on the enumerated powers listed in the Constitution. Alexander Hamilton disagreed. He argued that the General Welfare Clause allowed Congress to tax and spend for the general welfare without being limited by the enumerated powers. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet has been tapped to steer the UN's global human rights agenda, positioning her to become one of the most outspoken voices on a range of crises, spanning Syria to Yemen, Myanmar to South Sudan. Bachelet will take over from Jordan's Prince Zayed Ra'ad Al Hussein, who became UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in 2014 and developed a reputation as a straight talker willing to call out the U.S. and other countries, big and small.
He was very open, very eloquent, and very open to criticize governments when they were violating human rights. I think that has to continue.
Renzo Palmi is Amnesty International's representative to the UN in New York and says Bachelet's familiarity with other world leaders could give her added cachet, particularly if she chooses to push back against heads of state, cracking down on rights activists or the free press.
I think with the stature that Michelle Bachelet has, she should work with states to make sure that civil society, NGOs, and human rights offenders are able to participate and contribute as they had been doing for so many years.
Should she master the art of highlighting rights abuses in her public statements, Bachelet will still have to confront structural issues that complicate the UN's human rights goals. For one, the Security Council is as divided as ever, with veto-wielding countries like the U.S. and Russia shielding their allies from international justice. Then there's America's recent withdrawal from the Human Rights Council in Geneva, a move the Trump administration pinned on the Council's alleged anti-Israel bias. But Palmi says Bachelet can only do so much, and it's the responsibility of countries, ultimately, to change the UN system.
States shouldn't put all the burden on her. It's the role of states to provide us the resources and the political will.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we always like to begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River. in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. Pardon me. Where it is currently, well, it's only about 59 degrees. We're going to be slightly warmer than what we were yesterday. We should be in the mid to upper 90s, so only slightly warmer. We'll have an overnight low in the mid 60s, and let's see, winds are currently out of the east at a negligible 1 mile per hour, and that means that the air quality index is in the good range at 43 parts per million. I don't know if it's coming out of the east, if that's pushing it out to the ocean, or we'll see. But we do have a forecast of better air quality than we've had, and it's been really bad. And we'll get into that story later on here in the at the chef's table. Right now, so we're not quite sunny, though we have forecast for sunny skies, and winds will shift out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour in a couple of hours, and that's their usual clip, as I've mentioned before. And then tonight they'll shift once again, this time out of the northwest, but remaining at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We are expected to go into triple digits in the next few days. Dry conditions will continue, though we had a very small chance, 20% chance of rain from thunderstorm activity, which could be bad because lightning can start forest fires too. But rain could stop them, you hope. But we didn't get any of that. Humidity is at 73%. Grass pollen, if you're allergic to that, is considered low. And the daytime UV index is very high, but at 8. Visibility is at 9 miles, and high pressure, once again, is dominating the area at 29.9 inches, holding steady. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 71 and partly cloudy. Paris is 76 and partly cloudy. Rome is 88 and partly cloudy with a an active thunderstorm watch with electrical activity that could impact the electrical infrastructure there at Rome. Kiev is 84 and fair. Kabul is 83 and fair, but with heavy winds. Hong Kong, how can that be fair if they have heavy winds? You just think that would be like heavy winds, but that's what they say. Hong Kong is 80 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 78 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 52 degrees and clear. Yeah, they are. San Francisco, California is 53 and cloudy. And New York is 72 degrees Fahrenheit with rain. And you have an active flood watch, a flash flood watch in New York, Manhattan of all places. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Tina Bellin of Reuters brings us this first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. A California jury found Monsanto liable in a lawsuit filed by a man who alleged the company's glyphosate-based weed killers, including Roundup, caused his cancer, and then ordered the company to pay $289 million in damages. The case of school groundskeeper Dwayne Johnson was the first lawsuit to go to trial alleging glyphosate causes cancer. Monsanto, a unit of Bayer AG following a $62.5 billion acquisition by the German conglomerate, faces more than 5,000 similar lawsuits across the U.S. The jury at San Francisco's Superior Court of California deliberated for 3 days before finding that Monsanto had failed to warn Johnson and other consumers of the cancer risks posed by its weed killers. It awarded $39 million in compensatory and $250 million in punitive damages. Monsanto, in a statement, said it would appeal the verdict. Well, of course, that's a boilerplate statement. They just bring that out every time they lose. Everyone does. Back to the story. Today's decision does not change the fact that more than 800 scientific studies and reviews support the fact that glyphosate does not cause cancer and did not cause Mr. Johnson's cancer. Monsanto denies that glyphosate, the world's most widely used herbicide, causes cancer, and says decades of scientific studies have shown the chemical to be safe for human use. Of course they do. Johnson's case, filed in 2016, was fast-tracked for trial due to the severity of his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a cancer of the lymph system that he alleges was caused by Roundup and Ranger Pro, another Monsanto glyphosate herbicide. Johnson's doctor said he is likely to live past 2020. A former pest control manager for a California county school system, Johnson, age 46, applied the weed killer up to 30 times per year. Now think of that. For the regular homeowner, you're not going to be applying it that often. Now, would you? Are those the only people that they have in their study? Do they not use the professional application of the people who are using it? Oh, yeah, drink the stuff is fine. You can even shower in it. How many times have I heard that before? Over the course of the 4-week trial, jurors heard testimony by statisticians, doctors, public health researchers, and epidemiologists who disagreed on whether glyphosate can cause cancer. The EPA, in September 2017, concluded a decades-long assessment of glyphosate risks and found the chemical not likely carcinogenic. But the World Health Organization's cancer arm, in 2015, classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Finishing up here at the Chef's Table and West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays is a story out of the San Francisco Chronicle by Tricia Thadani and Sarah Ravini. The ranch fire in California is now the largest in California history, with almost 285,000 acres consumed. And that's a lot of structures in that area as well. Firefighters, though, did report progress yesterday in their battles against blazes across the state and the West, increasing containment on the largest wildfire in state history. The Mendocino Complex fires, made up of the river and ranch fires, consumed more than 8,000 more acres on Sunday. That was less growth than the additional 12,000 acres that were scorched Saturday. Officials at the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection don't expect to completely contain the blaze until September 1st. The Mendocino fires have burned almost 337,000 acres and are 70% contained. the larger of the two, the ranch fire, was responsible for all of the growth, burning almost 81,000 acres, 8,100 acres for a total of 287,479 acres. That made the ranch fire the largest blaze in state history, surpassing last year's Thomas Fire in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. The ranch blaze was 62% contained yesterday. The biggest concerns are on the ranch fire, which we still have active fire burning in the northern portion of the fire, said Kerry Wright, a public information officer for the Mendocino complex. It's very rugged terrain, mountainous, very thick, dense forest area, but they've been working on those areas for the last few days. Firefighters worked Sunday to prevent the fire from entering the Potter Valley and Stony Ford communities. A northern wind created a thick smoke layer that could be seen in Ukiah, Wright said, though that's not necessarily a bad thing for the firefight. The wind coming from the north is actually helping firefighters because it's blowing back into the fire. It should help ground resources, meaning that it's already burned. The wind is blowing the fire into what's already burned. Thus, there's no fuel. Over the next few days, the objective will be to keep the blaze within the Mendocino National Forest, where homes and lives are not at stake. Well, except for all the pot. Come on. Depending on the forecast for the week, bulldozer operators are expected to be sent to the ridges surrounding the fire perimeter to establish contingency lines and build a box around the fire. We don't want to get the fire to get beyond this box, so then our tactical efforts are going to be in there, Wright said, adding that they will then use aircraft and firefighters on the ground equipped with engines. Well, it's good to see they're getting a handle, but this could flare up at any time again, and that is the great fear. Now, of course, this fire is the largest in history only because it surpassed last year's record fire as being the largest in history. So I guess we're going to have that as part of our regular ecosystem now. Well, we better shut down our operations here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We got a lot of cleaning up to do for tomorrow when we visit for, well, Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That's what we do here. And Netroots Radio, of course, has breaking news right now as I speak, and so we'll get to that in just a moment or two. And do stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day for all that breaking news, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.